And hit record. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2. Hi, everybody. So, I recorded this whole entire video without any sound. And I started building this ship. This one I'm calling my GK5, the fifth large ship that I've built. And I didn't finish, and I was sort of wandering around in here, just trying to figure out what to do with the front part of the ship, and I ended up setting it aside. I had this big hangar built. It turned out really cool. I've been having just non-stop trouble with technology. I'm more of a Mac user, and I'm just completely hopeless on my Windows gaming computer at trying to do videos. So this is what we ended up with. A pretty cool ship and no sound in the video. And I'm going to come back to this one eventually, but then after this, I ended up making a really cool ship. So I'm currently building my 8th ship and still figuring out some troubleshooting with making the actual videos. So thanks everybody for your patience. Anyway, eventually you'll see that it has a double deck, kind of with an upper bridge and the lower sort of crew or passenger area. I thought it was cool, but then I just sort of gave up. So we'll fast forward here and get to the part of the actual ship. Ow. So I'm going to fast forward and just cut somewhere around here. And here we're skipping ahead till we find, this looks like the beginning of a new ship. And so actually here, clap, is a good place to start the actual first episode of my GK6 build, which is eventually going to be called, well, should I tell you, or should we do suspense? Make you watch and subscribe and like all these long hours just to find out the name. No, it'll probably be in the title. Anyway, this whole process is about, for me, is about just learning how to build a ship. I copied some YouTubers that I liked and just started learning how to build them, and had a lot of fun doing that, and then decided to just share my learning process with you all. And at this point, it's just a lot of mumbling about shapes. I do like the idea of having a merge block as an option. And what I'm mostly interested in building is like smallish exploration ships, like just basically solo survival kind of things, like something I can build up in a survival world. And oh, I think there was an issue. I wasn't able to build. There was some kind of glitch from in the software, a bug. So we're coming back in. I'll probably edit this out and just start when we load this back in. Or maybe I'll just leave this on with all this random commentary. But I decided that this ship turned out, you know, pretty cool. I like the way it ended up and wanted to share this with my 6 or 7 subscribers. Thank you all so much for subscribing. Because this is only my 2nd series, and, you know, I'm just a kind of a casual gamer. So clearly this is the very early stage of the ship, and I've been building most of my ships up to this point with sort of by adding the components and sort of shaping the ship around the components rather than by building, you know, a metal frame and putting stuff inside of it. And I definitely got this idea of making a spine, sort of a conveyor spine for your ship, from YouTuber Lunar, who does really cool builds. And also Psy Prime, PSY Prime, and Andrew Man Gaming do really cool and elaborate builds. And I paused here. I'll probably edit this. I think I ended up going to get tea or something like that. It's really funny watching this back without having any sound. But what seems to be working for me so far is to sort of build a, you know, a beginning floor area and then create sort of an engine room around that with a large container or maybe two, and, you know, sort of the basics of your thruster arrangement, like hydrogen tanks and hydrogen H2O2 generators. Okay, here I'm back. So for now I'm just creating a frame, and it's kind of funny looking at this now, seeing how it seems very, it just looks different, that's all. So I think I was trying more of that method of building a frame on this one. And that might be something to consider, because I think this one turned out. I was having trouble with building the front of the ship, and so I really wanted to start there this time, as I now remember. And this is actually the first time I'm looking back at this video, and I've built a couple ships since then, so it's actually kind of fun to watch. This is going to be my hangar area, I'm pretty sure. And I was also trying to just leave a little bit more space than I thought I needed. Because it seems like by the end, you know, once you add in all the things that you forget, you're pretty much out of room. And I sort of try to go in groups of like 3 and 5, since a lot of the bigger components are 3 by 3. And so if you make something that has a width of 5, then, you know, there's going to be a pretty good chance that you'll be able to make a pathway through it and around it. I remember that was something that I really struggled with when I first started, you know, building stuff in this game, was just how many blocks do you make things? So on this ship, I'm trying to just create something that looks like a cool shape, something that I can sort of frame around, and also trying to have some kind of count for how much space I'm going to need, including, you know, doors and airlocks, hangar doors, all of that kind of stuff. So I believe right here I'm building up what is eventually going to be the airlock that goes from the engine room into the hangar. This is now the engine room at the back. So I'm trying to make some kind of wing or landing platform for the hangar, the side door hangar. And I think also creating some room, making it a little wider for all the stuff that goes in the engine room, including like refinery and assembler and all that stuff, and the cargo container. and then also trying to make a decision about where thrusters are going to be. And one of my goals, for a while, sometimes I would do a text panel or an LCD panel and write down sort of my to-do list. And I don't know if I did that on this one. I hope I did, because then we'll be able to see some of that. Here I'm trying to cover up hangar doors. I like the idea of having them open up so that the base of them is on top. But that means you do have to go a little higher to... Oh, maybe this is going to be windows instead. I don't know. Like I said, it's been... Oh yeah, I think this is sort of the front area, like med bay, cryo room, that kind of thing. Nope, this is the hangar. I am also in suspense because it's been a while since I built this ship. So the idea is to have a hangar with, so you can get your mining ship or scout or whatever you have just in and out of a protected space. And I was saying before, I like those hangar doors facing down like that so that you can, if you walk up to them, you can look in the window. And that seems to be sort of as intended. And then having that hazard stripe along the bottom. It just looks a little nicer when it's facing that way, I think. So the last couple of times I've been trying that. Although it's easier to hide them when they're facing with the base of them on the bottom. And here again, just trying to create some kind of cool contour for the ship. Deciding to do the 3060 version instead of the 45. Yeah, just trying to sort of make a cool looking silhouette or cool looking footprint. That's going to be a door from the engine room, or rather from the bridge to the hangar. I think this is survival mode with creative tools on, and that's why I'm running low on energy and hydrogen. So here I'm trying to create a side connection for attaching to economy stations. At this point, uncertain about where to have it come out. Trying to find a way where there can be also a door, like a player-sized door, not just the hangar door. You're just trying to create some kind of interesting shell for the ship. You know, structure, something that looks like it's supposed to hold the ship together, sort of engineering-wise, like architecture, physically, whatever you want to call it. I'm not a scientist, I'm just a space engineer. So I do a lot of fiddling with stuff, but, you know, and not much editing out, so you can just fast forward through the boring parts if there's something specific that you're looking for. You know, you can probably sort it out along with me somewhere in this video. And I'm trying to just make a nice shape. Man, I was trying to make some kind of texture in the design here. I don't think it ended up being in the final shape. I'm trying to create a few just sort of walled off and distinct from each other sections of the ship. This obviously being the hangar. And this being the forward section. Which I'm intending to have, like, the bridge and med bay and some, you know, cryo chambers and some furniture type blocks, like kitchen, bed, toilet and shower, that sort of stuff. And I'm not a super experienced player. I've, you know, gotten into sort of middle game, I guess you could say, in a couple of solo survival starts, but I'm not super ambitious. I mostly just like to kind of build stuff. Bob Ross, happy little spaceships. And Bob Ross was actually a military veteran. And I don't know if they diagnosed PTSD back then, but he used his painting and art as, you know, his own therapy. And if you've ever watched Bob Ross, I think you can see some of his shows on Netflix. So those things sticking out are kind of like nacelles, like I'm intending for them to hold upward-facing thrusters. And here I'm just sort of counting out blocks to decide how much space to give. I'm trying to make something that looks supported to hold all of that up. So anyway, watch Bob Ross on Netflix. Painting show. You probably know who Bob Ross is, but just in case you don't, he was a painter who had a PBS special. In, I think, the 70s, 80s. And one of his kind of catchphrases was "happy little trees." So here I'm just creating a sort of an idea of how the size is going to be for thrusters and tanks. I'm trying to protect the tanks, the hydrogen tanks, and then also have both hydrogen thrust and ion thrust, and also upward thrusting atmospheric. So having all three types of thrusters. But then I'm also debating that because you can, if you give yourself enough hydrogen and really, if you can have a full enough, oops, I broke the ship. If you have full enough hydrogen, then, you probably don't need atmospheric, but then atmospheric can be really helpful if you just run out at the last minute, which seems to happen. But it seems to take a little more. It seems to take more atmospheric thrust than I expect. Than I expect for it to need to hold the whole ship up without help of hydrogen. And then for ion, you don't need that much. Just equal in all directions. For hydrogen, I like to have more upward hydrogen thrust for when you're in atmosphere or in gravity, and then more in the back because it looks cool. So here I'm just building up the front of the ship, trying to get get the 8-bit or 4-bit outline. I think that's where I'm thinking the airlock will be. I'm looking to push the bridge a little bit more forward. Excuse me, to make room. Here I think I'm considering going up a level. Making the floor go up a level, that is. I might be wrong, though. Without the audio, it's hard to tell. And I also do like the idea of being able to see out of a spaceship, like, just from the perspective of the little engineers that live in there. I think if I was designing one that I had to live on, I would definitely want to be able to see out into space a lot. I mean, right? And here I think I'm just trying again with the, oh yeah, I think we may be looking for where to put some reverse thrusters. And maybe the hydrogen tanks. I think I wanted to have 6 hydrogen tanks on this ship, and 3 on each side, and then try to have them protected enough by thrusters and armor that, you know, that hopefully they wouldn't immediately explode if they got shot at. On bigger ships, there's a cool trick that you can do to just put a welder just in the range of your hydrogen tanks or your thrusters or wherever, and then have an event controller that turns them on when the ship takes damage, and it'll help hold your ship together if you have the available materials. I did not do that here, but I have tried to build some ships in the style of Psy Prime. I recommend watching on YouTube, PSYPRIME, who does really big ship builds, and they're pretty cool to watch, and he's really slow, so get to sort of really follow along with the process, and I say really slow very much as a compliment. You may have noticed I'm pretty slow too. And by slow, I mean he explains what he's doing a lot. And, you know, you can sort of watch the decision-making process. It's not very edited. And I really like that. And I don't really look at, and I think you're supposed to look at images of, you know, spaceship art or whatever, try to get a design sort of on paper or something, like sketch something out before you start, but I don't really do that, and I don't really think about, you know, ships from existing shows or anything like that, shows or movies. I pretty much just try to build something that I think looks cool and that, you know, sort of all looks like it makes sense. And this is actually the first build that I tried, instead of going from, you know, building from the components and then adding a frame around it. I'm actually starting with the frame, which I think helped a lot, because it created these sort of through lines, like these areas that are definitely walls and definitely that look like support structures. But it also helped to do it the other way for a while, because it's sometimes hard to know how much space you need unless you really, you know, count things out and do the math. Here I'm trying to decide how to make a window, and kind of wanting something that slants from a bit more forward above to a bit lower, to a bit farther back below. I'm wanting to make this a 5-meter ceiling area, I think. Or maybe to step up to it. I don't remember. But we're getting close to the end of this video, and I decided to let it go here. And here we go. So I'll see you later. we've built the frame of the ship, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.